James Cameron, the creator of the sensational Titanic, soared to the Hollywood Olympus with ease and natural charm. Yet few remember that the first step on the ladder of his rapid ascent was built by a young waitress from a small restaurant. This story began in the small Californian town of Orange, when a lean young man entered the restaurant, Bob's Big Boy, slamming the door of a black sporty Corvette. The table was attended by a pretty young woman named Sharon Williams. Sharon, as befits a nearly adult young lady, immediately noticed the new visitor. She liked him very much. Tall, slender, and altogether appealing. And most importantly, there was something promising in his eyes. Apparently, Sharon also caught the attention of the young man. Sipping his Coca-Cola with a hamburger, he could not take his eyes off the girl in the apron, flitting around the dining room. When Sharon approached him to collect payment for the meal, she was in for a surprise. Next to the money on the table lay the keys to the Corvette. "My name is Jim," the young man introduced himself. "And this is your tip," he added, nodding toward the keys. Sharon Williams is now 42 years old. She still works as a waitress at a restaurant in Orange and often recalls how she met James Cameron 25 years ago. "It was love at first sight, and back then I thought it would never end. You know, sometimes I feel that Jim still loves me." Very soon, they were living together. Jim enrolled in college to study physics, while Sharon continued working at Bob's Big Boy. After her shifts, she would take off her apron and rush to the bookstore, the only place where Cameron could be found in the evenings. Jim managed to devour 4 to 5 books a day, Sharon recalls. He could not buy them, of course, because all the money his parents gave him for textbooks went to me, and clever Jimmy figured out a way to get smarter for free. After classes, he would go to the bookstore, stand by the textbook shelves, and read until I came to take him home in the evening. It must be said, the prospect of a physical career did not excite Cameron at all. Soon he dropped out of college and took a job delivering school lunches. Life in the tiny rented house on the outskirts of Orange felt like paradise for Jim and Sharon. Neither financial nor household problems could overshadow their love. Jim, however, turned out to be a terrible slob. Sharon constantly had to navigate mountains of shirts, pants, and shoes scattered across the house. When she grew tired of it, she bought a pole with a sharp tip, the kind street cleaners use to pick up trash on lawns and beaches. Sharon would now impale Jim's clothes on it and hang them in the bathroom. Even when all his clothes looked like a colander, he still did not understand what was going on. Once I came home and saw him sitting by the window, examining his jeans in the sunlight. Such bewilderment on his face. I could not hold back. I laughed and explained everything to him. As befits a future director, Cameron carefully plotted the story of his relationship with Sharon. Being with him was fun. Jimmy was always coming up with something, and I felt like I was in a movie, Sharon recalls. Whenever we had a free moment, Jim would put me in the car, and we would drive out of town. Somewhere on a deserted highway, he would accelerate to 160 kilometers per hour, then brake sharply and spin our Camaro 180 degrees. My heart would race with fear. Once he took Sharon to the local port. They secretly climbed onto a ship docked there and spent several hours making love in the back seat of a car found in the cargo hold. Cameron would later recreate this scene in Titanic song. And not just this one, Sharon Williams added coquettishly. "Remember the drawing of the naked rose? Jim often drew me, sometimes without clothes." On Valentine's Day in 1978, they married. By then, Cameron was already deeply obsessed with cinema. A couple of weeks after the wedding, he admitted to his wife that he intended to become a director, and that he would likely have to quit his job to pursue this dream. Sharon had no choice but to agree, unaware that soon Jim's obsession with film would take him away from her life entirely. While Sharon worked 2 shifts a day, spending all her earnings on cameras, lenses, film, and lighting equipment, Jim forgot the rest of the world. He turned the basement of their house into something between a film studio and a photo lab. Sharon probably thought I had gone mad, Cameron later said. After all, what did ordinary guys our age need? To smoke some weed, drink some beer, lie on the beach. But I stubbornly stayed in the basement, experimenting with lighting. I went upstairs less and less, looking pale and distracted. I think Sharon even began to fear me. When the famous producer Roger Corman hired Cameron, he was overjoyed. He hardly left the studio, located in the town of Venice, an hour's drive from Orange. He rented a small apartment nearby and soon stopped appearing at home. "The commute kills me," Jim complained to his wife. "If you want, it is better for you to move here yourself." But Sharon refused. Unfortunately, she realized that there was no longer a place for her in Jim's life. He was married to his work, not to me. Even when we were together, Jim only thought about filming. Jim and Sharon divorced in 1984. That autumn, the film The Terminator premiered in America, making its creator famous. 5 years earlier, at Roger Corman's studio, New World Pictures, preparations were underway for the science fiction film Battle Beyond the Stars, and Jim, working as a set decorator, labored tirelessly. Once, when I went into the studio, recalls Gail Ann Hurd, one of Corman's assistants, a tall, fairly handsome young man ran up to me. He said his name was James and offered to show me his sketches. They were really good. Judging by the drawings, James could draw very well. He was also a very pleasant guy. I think he liked me right away, too. It was true. Cameron and Gail's relationship quickly developed. They were often seen together, both on set and at cafes for lunch. Studio staff nodded knowingly at the sight of this couple. The young man was not to be underestimated. Gail, after all, was Corman's assistant, and the despotic old man listened to the opinions of his assistants. Jim knew exactly what he wanted in life and did everything right. Soon, the art director left the production, and a replacement was urgently needed. Naturally, Gail introduced Jim to the boss. Corman looked at his drawings, and in a single evening, Cameron went from being a simple set decorator to the production designer. In his new role, according to Gail Ann Hurd, Jim quickly revealed his directorial temperament. He liked to say, "I do not care who does it or how. I only care that the job gets done." Only a year passed, and 26-year-old Cameron was entrusted with directing his first film independently. He went to Italy to shoot Piranha II. He stayed in a shabby hotel, communicated with the crew with gestures. Most of them did not speak English at all, and in the evenings wrote the script for The Terminator. By that time, Gail was already working as a producer, and when Jim returned from Italy, he gave her his nearly finished script. Proposing an unusual arrangement, Cameron would sell her the full rights to the future film for $1, and she would promise that no one but Jim would direct it. To fulfill this condition, Gail had to work hard. After all, Hollywood was not about to entrust such an interesting project to an unknown director. Arnold Schwarzenegger agreed to participate. Everything suggested that the film would be a hit. And yet Gail kept her promise. By that time, their friendship had already developed into a romance. Every weekend, Jim would invite his beloved on a trip. And each time, the endlessly inventive Cameron turned it into an exciting adventure. Sometimes it was a romantic horseback ride, sometimes a reckless hot air balloon flight, which almost ended in tragedy due to bad weather. Sometimes it was a wild jeep ride across the desert, firing a Kalashnikov Jim had taken from the studio. But their favorite pastime remained highway racing. Gail would get into her Porsche, Jim would jump into his new Corvette, and let the race begin. They married in Hawaii in April 1986 and divorced 3 years later. Gail does not like to tell journalists what went wrong in their marriage. Only once did she reveal, "Being married to a man like Jim cannot really be called happiness. At some point, he simply stopped needing me. When I had serious problems, he was never there. Jim was either on set, at important meetings, or elsewhere. I constantly had to solve everything on my own and fight alone, without expecting help from my husband." Her words were echoed by James's own brother, Michael Cameron. "Jim is a very cruel man, especially to those close to him." In 1989, Cameron married again, this time to his colleague, director Kathryn Bigelow. This marriage was swift and unusual. They made one film together, Point Break, and by 1991, they mutually agreed that it was better to live apart. Hollywood speculated extensively about the reasons for such a quick divorce. Bigelow remained silent. Cameron spoke about her cautiously and politely. "Kathryn is a true professional in the field of cinema and a fan of her work, just like me." Most likely, with Kathryn, James became a prisoner of his own philosophy. Accustomed to independence, Bigelow eventually realized that she simply no longer needed Jim. Cameron recalled his old acquaintance, actress Linda Hamilton, 6 years after filming the first Terminator. Naturally, it was not a casual memory. The studio, Carolco, had decided to finance a sequel to the blockbuster. Arnold Schwarzenegger agreed to star again. In short, a new potential hit was on the horizon. Cameron immediately called Linda, but she did not want to participate, waiting for another major project. Cameron needed her for the role at all costs. He dropped everything, rushed to her, and began persuading her. In the end, Carolco signed an official contract with Linda, and Jim set to work on the script. The preparation period turned out to be hellish for Linda. The actress was in slightly worse shape than required for the role, and Cameron decided to fix that. He put Linda in a gym and personally monitored her calorie burn. "Sometimes I wanted to tell everyone to go to hell. The studio, the contract, Jim," the actress recalled. "But he was always there, constantly telling me, 'You can do this, I believe in you.' What else could I do? I had to sweat it out." During the filming of Terminator 2 Warning, Cameron unexpectedly and quietly moved in with Linda. In 1993, their daughter Josephine was born. Everyone thought they were the perfect couple and that Jim had finally found the woman of his dreams. Storm clouds began to gather 3 years later, in 1996, when Cameron started working on the now famous Titanic. Rumors began reaching Linda more and more frequently that Jim was not entirely faithful to his loving partner, that he had a young passion, the sexy blonde Suzy Amis, and that he had even moved her into his villa. "This cursed Titanic turned our relationship into a nightmare," Linda complained to her friends. "James forgot the way home, and when I called the set in Mexico, they told me they could not find him anywhere, even at night." Meanwhile, friendly informants kept calling with news of his affairs. I tried to talk to him frankly, but he denied everything and swore eternal love. Linda began visiting Mexico more often. Jim gave no cause for jealousy when she was there. But as soon as she returned to Malibu, the friendly news would arrive that her place had been taken by Suzy Amis. Eventually, Linda could not take it anymore. "Does he take me for a complete fool?" During one of her visits to the Titanic set, she had a very unpleasant conversation with Jim. Linda issued an ultimatum. Either Cameron commit to certain responsibilities toward her and their daughter and forget Suzy, or he could go to hell. Cameron made his choice, and in July 1997, they were married. The romance between Cameron and Suzy Amis ended. Jim now decided to take care of his wife. "You are fat," he told her, "and I do not like fat women." Under his careful guidance, Linda lost weight, changed her hairstyle, and updated her wardrobe. He personally took her shopping, picked out dresses to his taste, and Linda patiently endured all of her husband's whims and criticisms. "Finally, he has come to his senses," Linda happily shared with the press. "I know now we will be happy. After all, he still loves me." But the domestic idyll did not last long. At the end of March, Linda discovered that Jim had resumed secret meetings with Amis. "You are not to set foot in my bedroom again," she told her husband. James spent the night on the living room sofa and returned to his villa the next morning. "He thinks he has become a god and can now have any woman on the planet. But he has gone too far, and I will not tolerate it," Linda stated. Cameron irritably told reporters, "I do not care if she files for divorce or not. I want to be a free man again." Opinions in Hollywood about their divorce vary. Some believe Cameron is simply incorrigible. His wives remain wives only as long as he needs them. Once they are no longer necessary, that is it. Hasta la vista, baby. However, this time, Jimmy will pay dearly for his freedom. While his divorce from Sharon Williams once cost him only $1,200 with Linda, it will cost the director many millions. After all, the time of naive waitresses, believing in eternal love and willing to work themselves to the bone for their beloved, has passed.